I am Elena, 52 years old, and I caught my husband holding another woman's waist in an elevator 5 seconds before my entire life collapsed. Before I tell you about how I made him regret ever being born, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love reading about where you all are from. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesday is usually my accounting day. But that specific Tuesday, I wasn't doing the books. I was in an elevator in a building I had no business being in, wearing an old gray t-shirt stained with paint and dust. I looked a mess. My hair was pulled back in a frantic bun because I had spent the last 4 hours helping my best friend, Sarah, move boxes into her new apartment on the 10th floor. I was tired. My back ached in that specific way it does when you hit 50, a dull throb right at the base of your spine. I pressed the button for the ground floor, leaning against the cool metal wall, closing my eyes for just a second. The elevator hummed, a smooth, expensive sound. This was a nice building. Marble floors in the lobby, a concierge who looked like he judged your shoes, rent that probably cost more than my first car. The elevator slowed. The little screen above the door blinked. 5th floor. I sighed, shifting my weight, just wanting to get to my car and drive home. The door slid open with a soft chime. And there he was. My husband. Richard. He was laughing. His head was thrown back, that deep, booming laugh that used to make me feel safe, but now, in that small metal box, it sounded like a gunshot. He wasn't alone. His arm was wrapped tight around the waist of a woman. She was young. Painfully young. Her hair was that shiny, expensive blonde that takes hours at a salon. She was wearing a white dress that clung to her. And under that dress, unmistakable, was the round curve of a pregnancy bump. Richard was carrying a shopping bag from that high-end jewelry store on 5th Avenue, the one with the blue boxes. He looked good. He was wearing the suit I had picked up from the dry cleaners for him yesterday. He looked happy. Happier than I had seen him in 10 years. They stepped in. They were so wrapped up in each other they didn't even look at the corner where I was standing. Richard pressed the button for the ground floor, his hand lingering near hers. Then, he looked up. Our eyes met in the reflection of the elevator doors first. Then he turned, slowly, like a rusted machine. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he was going to faint. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His arm, which had been so possessively around her waist, dropped to his side like it had been burned. The silence was thick. It was heavy. You could choke on it. The girl, sensing the sudden tension, looked from Richard to me. She looked me up and down, taking in my paint-stained shirt, my messy hair, my tired face. Her nose wrinkled slightly, a gesture of pure, unfiltered distaste. She turned to Richard, her voice high and sweet, the kind of voice that grates on your nerves after 5 minutes. "Richard, honey," she said, loud enough for the entire building to hear. "Is she the maid? You really need to tell the building manager about the service staff using the main elevator. It smells like dust in here." She waved a hand in front of her nose. Richard didn't speak. He couldn't speak. He just stared at me, his eyes wide with a terror I had never seen before. He was waiting for me to scream. He was waiting for me to lunge at her. But I didn't. I looked at the girl. I looked at her belly. I looked at the blue jewelry bag in Richard's hand. And then I looked at my husband, the man I had built a life with for 30 years. "No," I said softly. My voice was steady. It didn't shake. "I'm getting off at the ground floor." The doors closed, sealing us in. Before that elevator ride, if you had asked anyone about Elena and Richard, they would have told you we were the gold standard. We were the couple you put on the front of a holiday card. 30 years. That's a lifetime. We met in college. He was loud and ambitious, full of big dreams but terrible with details. I was the quiet one, the one who loved numbers, who found comfort in the predictable balance of a ledger. I was an accountant. A good one. I was on track to make partner at my firm by the time I was 30. But then Richard started his company. It was a consulting firm, vague enough to sound important, specific enough to make money. He had the charisma. He could sell ice to a polar bear. But he couldn't manage a checkbook to save his life. So I stepped back. It was a temporary thing, we said. Just until the business got off the ground. I resigned from my firm. I set up a desk in our guest bedroom, and I became his unpaid CFO, his bookkeeper, his tax strategist, and his personal cheerleader. I remember the nights we spent in that small apartment when we were first starting out. We ate instant noodles because every spare dollar went into the business. I remember the panic in his eyes when payroll was due and the account was short. I was the one who moved money around, who negotiated with vendors, who kept the lights on. I built the financial foundation his empire stood on. And it worked. The company grew. We moved from the apartment to a house in the suburbs. A nice house. 4 bedrooms, a manicured lawn, a 2-car garage. We joined the country club because Richard said it was good for networking. I drove a sensible sedan, a Toyota that was 5 years old but reliable. Richard, he needed the image. He drove a Mercedes. Every 2 years, he got a new one. It shows success, Elena, he would say. Clients need to see success. I believed him. I believed in us. I handled everything at home, too. I raised our daughter, Emily, who was now away at grad school. I managed the household budget. I planned the vacations. I made sure his shirts were starched and his socks were matched. I was the invisible engine that kept the machine running. And over the years, I started to fade. That's what happens, isn't it? You give so much of yourself to someone else's dream that you forget you ever had one of your own. I stopped buying nice clothes because we needed to reinvest in the company. I stopped going to accounting seminars because Richard needed me to host dinner parties for his clients. I became Richard's wife. Even my friends, the few I had left from before, would ask about him first. How's Richard's business? Is the merger happening? They looked at me and saw a comfortable, middle-aged woman who lunched and gardened. They didn't see the woman who stayed up until 2 a.m. during tax season making sure every deduction was legitimate so Richard wouldn't go to jail. And Richard? He changed too. Success looks different on men than it does on women. On me, it looked like exhaustion and wrinkles. On him, it looked like confidence. He started going to the gym. He started buying custom suits. He started dyeing his hair to cover the gray. He started traveling more. Client meetings, he said. Conferences. I have to go to Chicago for the weekend, Elena. Big potential contract. New York again, honey. The investors are nervous. I packed his bags. I ironed his shirts. I put notes in his suitcase telling him I loved him and to be safe. I never questioned it. Why would I? We were a team. We had built this together. There were signs, of course. Looking back, they were like neon flashing lights. The late-night texts he would shield from my view. The sudden password change on his phone because of security updates at the firm. The way he would snap at me if I asked too many questions about his schedule. But the biggest sign was the distance. It wasn't that we fought. We didn't fight. We just stopped existing in the same space. We were roommates who shared a bank account and a history. He would come home, eat the dinner I made, talk about his day, always about himself, never asking about mine, and then go to his study to work. I told myself this was normal. This is what marriage looks like after 30 years. The passion fades, but the partnership remains. We were stable. We were safe. Or so I thought. That Tuesday morning, before I went to help Sarah, Richard had kissed me on the cheek. A peck. Dry and quick. I'll be late tonight, Elle, he had said, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. Dinner with the Japanese investors. Don't wait up. Okay, I had said. Good luck. Knock 'em dead. He had smiled at his reflection, not at me. Always do. I watched him drive away in his shiny black Mercedes. I felt a swell of pride. That was my husband. The successful businessman. And I was the woman who made it possible. I drove my Toyota to Sarah's new building. It was a luxury high-rise downtown. Sarah had downsized after her divorce, trading her house for a view of the skyline. I was happy for her, but a little sad too. Divorce seemed so messy, so painful. I was glad I didn't have to worry about that. I spent the day unpacking boxes, wrapping glassware, breaking down cardboard. It was hard work, but satisfying. Sarah and I laughed, drank cheap wine from paper cups, and reminisced about college. You're lucky, Elena, Sarah had said, pausing with a stack of books in her hands. You and Richard. You guys made it. You're the last one standing. I had smiled, wiping dust from my forehead. Yeah. We made it. I truly believed that. I believed it right up until the moment those elevator doors opened on the 5th floor. The irony is bitter. I was wearing my oldest clothes because I didn't want to ruin anything nice. I looked like I cleaned houses for a living. And that girl, that child with the blonde hair and the swollen belly, she looked at me and saw exactly what I had allowed myself to become. Service staff. Help. Someone who exists in the background to make life easier for the important people. Is she the maid? The question echoed in my head as the elevator descended. It bounced off the polished steel walls. It wasn't just an insult. It was an erasure. It wiped away 30 years of love, of labor, of partnership. In 5 words, she had defined my entire existence in Richard's new world. I wasn't his wife. I wasn't his partner. I was the help. And the worst part? Richard hadn't corrected her. The drive home usually takes 30 minutes. That day, I made it in 18. I don't remember the traffic lights. I don't remember the turns. I just remember the grip of my hands on the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. I was squeezing so hard I thought the plastic might crack under my palms. I didn't cry. You would think I would be sobbing, screaming, pounding on the dashboard. But I wasn't. It was like a switch had been flipped inside my brain. The emotional part of me, the wife who loved Richard, who packed his suitcases and cooked his meals, she had gone into shock. She was curled up in a corner of my mind, paralyzed. But the other part of me? The accountant? The woman who could spot a decimal error in a spreadsheet from across the room? She was wide awake. She was hyper-alert. My mind was racing, not with questions of why, or how could he, but with data. I was processing information at a speed that frightened me. Fact, Richard was not at a dinner with Japanese investors. Fact, he has a key to an apartment on the 5th floor of the unsuspecting high-rise. Fact, the woman is pregnant. At least 6 months along. Fact, he bought her jewelry from Tiffany's. I saw the bag. A blue box. He hasn't bought me jewelry in 5 years. Fact, she thinks I'm a maid. Which means he hasn't told her about me. Or he lied about who I am. The car hummed beneath me. I turned onto our street. The houses looked the same as they had this morning. Perfectly manicured lawns. Tasteful mailboxes. It was a lie. All of it. A facade. I pulled into the driveway. Richard's spot was empty. Of course it was. He was probably still frantically trying to explain to his pregnant girlfriend why he looked like he'd seen a ghost in the elevator. Or maybe he was rushing home right now to beat me to the punch. I walked into the house. It was quiet. The silence felt different now. It didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty. It felt like a stage set for a play that had been cancelled. I went straight to the kitchen. I didn't turn on the lights. I stood in the dim glow of the refrigerator display and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. That scared me more than shaking would have. I drank the water and then I went to my office. This was my domain. It was the smallest room in the house, crammed with file cabinets and a sturdy oak desk. This was where I managed our life. This was where I paid the bills, filed the taxes, tracked the investments. I sat down and booted up my computer. The screen glowed blue, illuminating my face. I logged into our joint bank account. I scrolled through the transactions for the last month. Nothing unusual. Mortgage payment. Utilities. Groceries. Gas. A few dinners out. I frowned. An apartment in that building downtown cost at least $4,000 a month. Plus the furniture. Plus the lifestyle. Plus the jewelry. Where was the money coming from? I checked our savings. Intact. I checked our investment portfolio. Normal fluctuations. Richard wasn't stupid. He wouldn't pay for a mistress out of our joint checking. That would be too easy. I leaned back, tapping my finger on the desk. Think, Elena. Think like an auditor. If the money isn't leaving the personal accounts, it has to be coming from somewhere else. The business. I hadn't looked closely at the company books in 2 years. We had hired a new CFO, a young guy named Brad, handpicked by Richard. To take the load off you, honey, Richard had said. You deserve to relax. I had trusted Brad. I had trusted Richard. But I still had access. I was still listed as a founding partner. My name was on the incorporation papers. I still had my admin login for the company server. Richard, in his arrogance, had probably forgotten to revoke it. Or maybe he thought I was too retired to remember how to use it. I typed in my old username. ewalker_admin. Password. I tried my old one. Blue Sky 1995. Access denied. I tried variations. Nothing. Okay. Fine. I sat there for a moment, staring at the login screen. Then, I remembered something. Richard is creature of habit, but he's also lazy with technology. He uses the same password for everything until he's forced to change it. And when he changes it, he follows a pattern. The name of the street we grew up on, followed by the year. Or his favorite football team. But there was another way. Apple. We shared a family plan for our iPhones. He had set it up years ago so we could share apps and music. He always complained that I didn't use it enough. You're wasting the cloud storage, Elena, he would say. I grabbed my iPad. I opened the Find My app. There was my dot, pulsing blue at our house. And there was his dot. Richard's iPhone 13 Pro. It was still downtown. At the building. I switched to the iCloud settings. I knew his password for this. He had given it to me last year when he wanted me to download some photos of Emily's graduation. He never changed it because he said, who would want to hack my boring life? I typed it in. Cowboys, 1980. The little wheel spun. My heart hammered against my ribs. Unlock. I was in. I wasn't looking for emails yet. I went straight to the location history. It's a feature buried deep in the settings, significant locations, most people don't even know it exists. It tracks everywhere you go and how long you stay there. To provide better map suggestions, Apple says. To provide evidence for wives, I say. I scrolled down the list. Home. Office. 500 Riverfront Plaza. That was the address of the building. I tapped on it. The list of visits was staggering. Monday, 6 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Wednesday, 5:45 p.m. to 11 p.m. Friday, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Saturday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., while he told me he was golfing. It went back 2 years. 2 years. While I was cooking his dinners, while I was washing his clothes, while I was sitting alone in this house waiting for him, he was there. With her. I felt a wave of nausea, hot and bitter. 2 years wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-night stand. It was a second life. I went to his photos. There she was. Selfie after selfie. Her kissing his cheek. Him holding her hand at a restaurant I had been begging him to take me to for months. Photos of them on a boat. When was he on a boat? Photos of an ultrasound. Baby boy. Due December. He was having a son. We had wanted a son. After Emily, we tried. But I had a miscarriage. And then another. The doctors said we should stop. Richard had held me while I cried, telling me, "It's okay, Elle. We have Emily. That's enough." But apparently, it wasn't enough. I stared at the photo of the ultrasound. My finger hovered over the delete button. I wanted to erase it. I wanted to burn the iPad. But the accountant stopped me. Evidence. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was leverage. I took screenshots. I downloaded everything to a secure folder on my own drive. I synced his notes. I synced his calendar. Then I saw an email notification pop up on the screen mirrored from his phone. It was from a real estate agent. Subject: Closing documents for Unit 5B. I opened it. It was an attachment. A deed. The apartment wasn't rented. It was bought. But the buyer wasn't Richard Walker. The buyer was R&T Consulting LLC. I froze. That wasn't our company name. Our company was Walker Strategies. I quickly searched the Secretary of State's business registry on my computer. R&T Consulting LLC. Registered agent, Richard Walker. Incorporation date, 2 years ago. I went back to the bank statements of our main company. I needed access. I needed to see where the money for R&T Consulting came from. If I couldn't get into the server, I had to find a paper trail. I remembered the filing cabinet in the garage. Richard kept physical copies of old contracts there. Sometimes, he left recent stuff in his briefcase. His briefcase. He usually left it by the door when he came in. But he wasn't home yet. I heard the garage door rumble. The sound was like thunder. He was home. I quickly closed the apps on the iPad. I wiped the screen to remove my fingerprints. I turned off my computer monitor. I sat in the dark office, listening. The heavy door from the garage opened. Footsteps on the tile. Slow. Hesitant. "Elena?" His voice cracked. He sounded scared. "Good." I took a deep breath. I smoothed my hair. I stood up. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to play the long game. I walked out of the office and into the hallway. He was standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers. Lilies. My favorite. Or they used to be, before I realized they are the flowers you bring to funerals. He looked terrible. Sweaty. Pale. His tie was loosened. "Elena," he said again, a fake smile plastered on his face. The dinner ended early. The Japanese investors, they were jet-lagged. I looked at him. I looked at the flowers. "Oh?" I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Calm. Detached. "Yeah," he stepped forward, extending the flowers. "I thought. I missed you. I wanted to bring you these." He was scanning my face, looking for signs of the explosion. He wanted to know if I had figured it out. He wanted to know if the woman in the elevator had ruined him yet. I took the flowers. Their scent was overpowering. "That's sweet," I said. "Thank you." He let out a breath he had been holding. His shoulders slumped. He thought he was safe. He thought I was stupid. He thought that because I didn't make a scene in the elevator, I must have bought his silence. "I saw you today," he said, testing the waters. "Downtown. At that building." I looked him dead in the eye. "Did you?" I asked. "I was helping Sarah move. It was chaotic. I didn't see you." I lied. His eyes widened. Relief washed over him like a tidal wave. "Oh. Oh, good. I mean, I was there for a meeting. With a client. And his daughter. She's pregnant. Very emotional. We were just sharing the elevator." "His daughter," I repeated. "Yeah. A bit of a drama queen." She thought, well, she made a rude comment. "I hope you didn't hear it." "I was wearing headphones," I lied again. "I didn't hear a thing." Richard smiled. A real smile this time. The smile of a man who just dodged a bullet. "Good," he said. "Good. I'm going to go grab a shower. It's been a long day." "Go ahead," I said. "Dinner will be ready in an hour." He kissed my forehead, a wet, clammy kiss, and headed up the stairs. He was whistling. Actually whistling. I waited until I heard the water running in the master bathroom. Then I walked over to the entryway table where he had dropped his keys, his wallet, and his phone. He had left his phone unlocked. He was so relieved, so arrogant, so sure that his dumb little wife was oblivious, that he got careless. I picked up the phone. The screen lit up. I had about 10 minutes before he got out of the shower. 10 minutes to destroy him. The shower water running upstairs was a distant roar, covering the sound of my own thundering heart. I held Richard's phone in my hand like it was a grenade with the pin pulled. I didn't need to guess passwords this time. It was open. He had been texting right before he walked in the door, probably updating her. I swiped up. The Messages app was still open. Top thread, "Tiffany, my love," white heart. My stomach turned over, a physical lurch that almost made me drop the phone. My love. He hadn't called me that in a decade. I tapped the thread. "Richard, 10 minutes ago. It's handled." She didn't see anything. She's clueless. I told you, Elena lives in her own little world. She thinks I was with clients. Tiffany, she looked like a homeless person, Richard. Are you sure she didn't hear me ask about the maid service? I don't want drama. My blood pressure is already up. Richard, don't worry, baby. I smoothed it over. Just focus on our son. I'll be back over tomorrow night. I told her I have a late board meeting. Tiffany, bring more of those pickles I like. And the credit card is maxed out again. I needed new curtains for the nursery. The gray ones were depressing. Richard, I'll transfer more funds in the morning. Love you. I stared at the screen. Clueless. Lives in her own little world. Is that what he thought of me? The woman who did his tax returns for 20 years? The woman who spotted the loophole in the merger contract that saved him $1 million in 2015? He mistook my silence for stupidity. He mistook my trust for blindness. I scrolled up. It went on and on. Plans for vacations. Complaints about me, she made that dry chicken again, she's so boring, she just wants to watch gardening shows. Mocking my appearance. But then, I found what I was really looking for. The money trail. I switched to his email app. I searched for transfer, wire, bank. I found a thread with his personal banker, a man named Steve who I had hosted for dinner last Christmas. Subject, RNT fund injection. Steve, Richard, I'm pushing this through, but you need to be careful. Pulling this much from the employee pension fund is risky. If the auditors look too closely at the consulting fees category, flags will go up. Richard, just do it, Steve. I'm the CEO. I approve the audits. I need $50,000 in the R&T account by Friday. The closing costs on the apartment were higher than expected. I gasped. The sound escaped my lips before I could stop it. He wasn't just spending his salary. He wasn't just dipping into our savings. He was embezzling. He was stealing from his own employees' pension fund. People like Janice, the receptionist who had been with him since day one. People like Mike, the project manager with 3 kids. He was stealing their retirement money to buy gray curtains for his mistress's nursery. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was a crime. A federal crime. I quickly forwarded the emails to my secret Proton Mail account, an encrypted email I had set up years ago for just-in-case scenarios, though I never thought the scenario would be this. I took photos of the screen with my own phone, just to be safe. I found invoices for the R&T Consulting LLC. They were fake. Bills for strategic advisory services charged to Walker Strategies, paid to R&T $10,000 here. $15,000 there. Monthly. For 2 years. It totaled nearly $500,000. He was draining the company dry. No wonder he had been complaining about tight margins lately. No wonder he had frozen raises for the staff last year. I heard the water stop upstairs. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. He was getting out. I quickly closed the apps. I swiped the recent app's history to make it look like nothing had been opened. I placed the phone back on the table, exactly at the angle it was before. I grabbed a magazine from the rack and sat down on the bench in the hallway, forcing my breathing to slow. In, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Richard appeared, towel-drying his hair, wearing his comfortable sweatpants. He looked relaxed. The tension from earlier was gone. "Smells good," he said, sniffing the air. "What's for dinner?" There was nothing cooking. I hadn't started dinner. "I ordered takeout," I said, standing up. "Thai. Your favorite." "Oh. Great." He picked up his phone. He glanced at the screen. He unlocked it. My heart stopped. Did I leave an app open? Did I leave a fingerprint? He frowned. "Weird," he muttered. "What?" I asked, my hand gripping the magazine so hard the paper tore. "Battery is lower than I thought. Must have an app running in the background." He shrugged and shoved the phone in his pocket. "I'm starving." I exhaled. "Me too," I said. "I'm famished." And I was. But not for food. I was hungry for justice. That night, I lay in bed next to him. He fell asleep instantly, his snoring a rhythmic rumble that used to comfort me but now sounded like the growl of a monster. I stared at the ceiling. The shadows from the street lamp outside played across the plaster. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't confront him yet. If I confronted him now, he would destroy the evidence. He would call Steve the banker and cover his tracks. He would spin a story. He would gaslight me. He would probably hide the assets so deep I'd never find them. I needed help. I needed a shark. I waited until I was sure he was in deep REM sleep. Then, I slipped out of bed. I went downstairs to the guest room, my old office from the early days. I pulled out a burner phone I kept in the emergency earthquake kit. I turned it on. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 20 years. "Hello?" A groggy, gravelly voice answered. It was 11:30 p.m. "Vance," I said. "It's Elena Walker." Silence on the other end. Then, a rustle of sheets. "Elena? Richard's wife? Is everything okay?" "No," I said. I need to hire you. And not for the company. Against it. Vance was the toughest corporate litigator in the state. We had used him once, years ago, to fight off a hostile takeover. Richard hated him because Vance was expensive and rude. But Vance respected me. He had once told me, "You're the only person in this company with a brain, Elena." "Talk to me," Vance said, his voice suddenly alert. "I found fraud. Embezzlement. Pension theft. And a mistress. I have screenshots. I have emails." "Who is the target?" "Richard Walker." A low whistle. "You want a divorce?" "No," I said, looking at the moon through the window. "I want an execution. A legal one." "I'm listening." "I need you to meet me tomorrow." "Not at your office. Somewhere quiet." "And Vance?" "Bring a forensic accountant. I have the best one in the city." 9 a.m. The diner on 4th, wear sunglasses. "I'll be there." I hung up. I sat there in the dark, feeling a strange sensation spreading through my chest. It wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't sadness. It was power. For 30 years, I had been the shield that protected Richard. I had fixed his mistakes. I had covered his weaknesses. Now, I was going to be the sword that cut him down. The diner on 4th Street was one of those places that smelled of bacon grease and stale coffee, the kind of place where nobody looked at anybody else. Perfect. I arrived at 8:50 a.m. I was wearing big sunglasses and a scarf, feeling ridiculous, like a character in a bad spy movie. But I couldn't risk being seen. Richard thought I was at a garden club meeting. Vance walked in at exactly 9 o'clock. He looked older than I remembered, his hair completely white, his face lined like a roadmap. But his eyes were the same, sharp, blue, predatory. Beside him was a woman who looked like a librarian but carried herself like a soldier. "Elena," Vance nodded, sliding into the booth opposite me. "This is Sarah." "Not your friend Sarah." "Sarah the numbers Grim Reaper." Sarah the accountant didn't smile. She just opened a laptop. "Show me what you have." I handed over the flash drive where I had saved everything from the night before. Sarah plugged it in. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Vance ordered coffee. "You look tired, Elena." "I haven't slept," I said. "Good. Anger keeps you awake. Sadness makes you sleep. Stay angry." Sarah let out a small noise. "Oh, wow." "What?" I asked. "He's sloppy," Sarah said, not looking up. "Arrogant and sloppy. He's funneling money through a shell company, R&T, but he's using the same IP address for the transfers as he uses for his company email. Rookie mistake." "How much?" Vance asked. "So far?" "Based on these emails, about $450,000 in cash transfers. Plus." She squinted at the screen. "He took out a second mortgage on your house, Elena." The room spun. "What?" "6 months ago. A home equity line of credit. $200,000. Did you sign for this?" "No. The house is in both our names. He needs my signature." Sarah turned the laptop screen toward me. There was a document. A loan agreement. And at the bottom, my signature. "That's not my signature," I whispered, tracing the ink on the screen. "The E is too loopy. I don't loop my E's." "Forgery," Vance said, his voice dropping an octave. "Bank fraud. Now we're talking about federal prison time, not just a lawsuit." I felt sick. He had forged my name. He had risked our home, the home where we raised our daughter, to pay for his mistress's lifestyle. "We have him," Vance said. "We can file today. Freeze his assets. Have him arrested." "No," I said. Both of them looked at me. "No?" Vance raised an eyebrow. Next week, I said. Next Wednesday. Why Wednesday? It's the company's 20th anniversary gala. The merger celebration. Everyone will be there. The investors. The board. The employees whose pension he stole. The press. I leaned forward. He's planning to announce his semi-retirement that night. He wants to step back to chairman and let Brad run the day-to-day so he can spend more time with his family. Meaning her. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. I don't just want him arrested, Vance. I want him exposed. I want everyone to see who he really is. I want to take the microphone and play this evidence on the big screen while he's standing there in his tuxedo. Vance smiled. It was a terrifying smile. It showed a lot of teeth. Nuclear option, he said. I like it. But it's risky. If he sniffs this out before Wednesday, he can hide the money offshore. We need to keep him calm. You have to play the loving wife for 5 more days. Can you do that? I can do it, I said. And we need more, Sarah said. We have the financial trail. But the emotional impact? We need visuals. Juries and audiences love visuals. I have a friend, I said, thinking of my best friend Sarah, the other Sarah. She lives in the building. She knows the building manager. Get the security footage, Vance said. Get him coming and going. Get him acting like a husband to that woman. If we're going to destroy him, let's leave no doubt. I left the diner feeling lighter than I had in years. I had a plan. I had a team. I called Sarah, my friend, immediately. Elena? Why are you whispering? I need a favor. A big one. You're friends with the concierge, right? The guy who likes true crime podcasts? Yeah, Dave. Why? I need footage. From the elevator. From the hallway on the 5th floor. Dates and times. Elena, is this about Richard? Yes. I knew it. Sarah shouted. I knew that bastard was up to something. I saw him once in the lobby but I thought I was crazy. I'm on it. Dave will do anything for a bottle of good scotch. Get me the footage, Sarah. Everything you can find. Consider it done. Burn him to the ground, honey. I drove home, rehearsing my lines. Hello, honey. How was work? Yes, the chicken is ready. Oh, you're working late again? Poor baby. I pulled into the driveway. My phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I picked up. Hello? Mrs. Walker? A female voice. Young. Sticky sweet. Yes? This is Tiffany. Well, I'm a friend of Richard's. I think we met in the elevator? My blood froze. Why was she calling me? How did she get my number? Oh, I said, forcing a confused tone. The pregnant young lady? How did you get my number? Richard left his phone at the office. I saw your number under home. Listen, I just wanted to apologize for the Maid comment. I'm just so hormonal lately. She didn't sound sorry. She sounded like she was digging. It's quite all right, I said. I was looking a bit messy. Yeah, she laughed. You really were. Anyway, Richard talks about you sometimes. He says you're very motherly. Motherly. Another insult wrapped in a compliment. Old. Unsexual. Safe. That's nice of him, I said. He's so stressed about this merger, she continued. I just hope he makes the right choice. For his future. She was taunting me. She knew. She knew I was the wife, and she was calling to mark her territory. To see if I was a threat. I'm sure he will, I said. Richard always does what's best for Richard. Well, nice chatting. Bye. Click. I stared at the phone. Game on, Tiffany. You think you're the future? Honey, you're about to be history. The next 3 days were a masterclass in acting. I should have won an Oscar. I cooked Richard's favorite meals. I listened to him drone on about the gala. I even ironed the tuxedo he was going to wear to his own funeral. But the universe has a funny way of testing you. It was Saturday. 2 days before the gala. I needed to go to the grocery store. There's a Whole Foods near downtown that Richard loves because they have this specific organic kale he pretends to eat. I was in the produce aisle, squeezing avocados, when I heard that voice again. No, I want the imported ones. The local ones taste like dirt. I froze. I peeked through a gap in the display of organic bananas. It was Tiffany. She was wearing a tight yoga outfit, her belly proudly on display. She was berating a store employee about strawberries. And she wasn't alone. Standing next to her, looking bored and scrolling on his phone, was Richard. He was supposed to be at the golf course. Networking with the senator, he had said. My heart hammered. I should leave. I should run. If they saw me, the whole plan could blow up. But I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, watching them. Richard put a hand on her back to calm her down. She shrugged him off, pouting. He whispered something in her ear. She giggled. He kissed her forehead. It was so domestic. So normal. It was a scene from a marriage, just not ours. Then, Tiffany turned. She looked right at the banana display. I ducked. My heart was in my throat. I crouched down on the floor, pretending to tie my shoe, praying to every god I didn't believe in that she hadn't seen me. Hey, Tiffany's voice drifted over the fruit stand. Isn't that your cleaning lady? Oh God. Where? Richard's voice. Panicked. Over there. By the bananas. Hiding like a weirdo. I had to think fast. If Richard saw me, he would know. He would know I was following him. He would know I knew. I stood up. I didn't look scared. I forced a smile. A bright, oblivious smile. Richard! I exclaimed, waving a hand. Oh my goodness! What a surprise! Richard looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. His face went from tan to gray in seconds. He practically jumped away from Tiffany. Elena, he squeaked. What are you doing here? Buying avocados. I held one up cheerfully. You said you wanted guacamole for the game tomorrow. But I thought you were golfing? He stammered. It rained. At the course. So we cancelled. And I ran into, He gestured vaguely at Tiffany. Tiffany crossed her arms. She stared at me with pure venom. She was waiting for him to introduce her. This is Tiffany, Richard said, sweating. She's the intern. From the office. I was just helping her pick out snacks for the office party on Monday. Snacks, I repeated, looking at her cart full of prenatal vitamins, expensive cheese, and pickles. For the office. Yes. Richard said, too loud. Exactly. Tiffany rolled her eyes. She stepped forward, invading my personal space. She smelled of expensive vanilla perfume and entitlement. Hi, Elena, she said, emphasizing my name mockingly. Richard talks about you. He says you make great guacamole. She looked at my outfit. I was wearing jeans and a blouse. Nothing fancy, but clean. Better than a maid's uniform, I guess, she whispered, low enough that only I could hear. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage flared in my chest. I wanted to slap that smirk off her face. I wanted to scream that the diamond earrings she was wearing were bought with my retirement fund. But then I remembered Vance's voice. Stay angry. Wait for Wednesday. I took a deep breath. I looked her in the eye. It's a family recipe, I said sweetly. It requires a lot of smashing. I'm very good at smashing things these days. I saw a flicker of confusion in her eyes. Anyway, I turned to Richard. I won't interrupt your work shopping. Don't be too late, honey. I'm making a roast. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. But my hands were shaking so hard I dropped the avocado in the next aisle. It splattered on the floor, green mush everywhere. I stared at the mess. Smashing things. Yes. That's exactly what I was going to do. I got home and checked my email. A new message from Sarah, my friend. Subject, gotcha. Attached was a video file. I clicked play. It was black and white footage from the hallway of the 5th floor. Timestamp, last Tuesday. It showed Richard and Tiffany walking to the door of apartment 5B. Richard unlocked it with a key. But that wasn't the damning part. The damning part was what happened right before they went inside. Richard stopped. He pulled Tiffany close. He knelt down. He kissed her belly. And then, he handed her a document. She looked at it and squealed, jumping up and down. She hugged him. I paused the video. I zoomed in. The document. It was blue. Legal paper. It was a revised will. He wasn't just buying her an apartment. He was writing me out of everything. My phone rang. It was Vance. We have a problem, he said. What? Richard's lawyer just filed a motion to liquidate some assets. Early. Before the merger announcement. He's trying to move $2 million to an account in the Caymans. Tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. Banks are closed. Electronic transfers don't sleep, Elena. If he pushes that button tomorrow, the money is gone. We can't stop it unless we file the injunction now. If we file now, he knows, I said. The gala is ruined. The public exposure is gone. Elena, listen to me. Do you want the revenge, or do you want the money? You might have to choose. I stood in my kitchen, the silence of the empty house pressing in on me. I thought about the Maid comment. I thought about the motherly insult. I thought about him stealing from the pension fund. No, I said into the phone. I want both. How? Block the transfer internally. Make it look like a technical glitch. Stall him for 48 hours. Can Sarah do that? Vance paused. It's illegal. Technically. So is forging my signature on a mortgage. Do it, Vance. Hack the system. Crash the server if you have to. Buy me 2 days. A long silence. You're terrifying, Elena, Vance said. I'll make the call. I hung up. I walked to the calendar on the fridge. Wednesday, gala. I took a red marker and circled the date. I drew a smiley face next to it. Richard came home an hour later. He was jittery. He kept checking his phone. Is the Wi-Fi down? He asked. I can't access the bank portal. Oh, I said, stirring the roast. I think the storm knocked out the local tower. The neighbors are complaining too. Damn it. He slammed his phone on the counter. I need to make a transfer. It can wait until Monday, can't it? I asked innocently. He looked at me. He looked trapped. Yeah, he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Yeah. Monday is fine. He didn't know that on Monday, Sarah the accountant would be putting a digital lock on every account he owned. And on Wednesday, I would be holding the key. Sunday and Monday passed in a blur of calculated deception. My house felt like a theater stage, and I was giving the performance of a lifetime. Richard was a wreck. The technical glitch at the bank, courtesy of Vance's back-channel connections, had stalled his transfer to the Caymans. He was pacing the living room, sweating through his shirts, shouting at poor Brad on the phone about incompetence and server upgrades. I watched him from the kitchen island, chopping vegetables with a rhythm that felt like a ticking clock. Chop. 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 It's just a delay, honey, I soothed, handing him a glass of iced tea. I'm sure it will clear up by Wednesday. Maybe it's a sign you should focus on your speech? You want the gala to be perfect. He looked at me, his eyes wild. The speech. Right. The speech has to be perfect. If I nail the speech, the board will be eating out of my hand. Even if funds are tight. Exactly, I smiled. Why don't let me look at your presentation? You know I've always had a knack for the flow of these things. He hesitated. For a second, I saw the suspicion flicker in his eyes. He clutched his laptop bag tighter. No, I've got it. Brad did the slides. It's fine. Okay, I shrugged, turning back to my vegetables. Just trying to help. I know how much legacy means to you. He relaxed. Legacy. Yes. That's the theme. Building a future. If only he knew his future was currently being dismantled, brick by brick, by the woman chopping carrots 5 feet away. Tuesday came. The day of the swap. I knew Richard's routine. On the day before a big event, he went to the barber for a hot shave and a trim at 2 p.m. He left his laptop at home because he didn't want hair clippings in the keyboard. At 2:05 p.m., I was in his study. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. I had a USB drive in my pocket. On it was a file named merger_presentation_final_v2.pptx. It looked exactly like his file. It had the same title slide. It had the same font. But inside? Inside was a bomb. I opened his laptop. Password, Cowboys, 1980. Predictable. I found his presentation on the desktop. I opened it. It was boring. Slide after slide of bar charts showing projected growth that I knew was fabricated based on the stolen pension funds. I inserted my USB drive. I dragged his file to the trash. I dragged my file to the desktop. And then, just as the progress bar hit 99%, the front door opened. Elena? I forgot my wallet. Richard's voice boomed from the hallway. I froze. The progress bar hung at 99%. Come on. Come on. I'm in the study, honey. I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. Just looking for a stamp. Okay, be right there. I heard his footsteps on the hardwood. Clack. 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 The screen blinked. Copy complete. I yanked the USB drive out. I closed the laptop. I grabbed a sheet of stamps from the drawer just as Richard walked in. He looked at me. He looked at the laptop. What are you doing? He asked, his eyes narrowing. I told you, I held up the stamps. Mailing a birthday card to Aunt Marge. Do you have any cash? The gardener is coming tomorrow. He stared at me for one long, agonizing second. Then he looked at the closed laptop. No, he said. Check my wallet on the dresser upstairs. I'm late. He turned and walked out. I slumped into the leather chair, my knees giving way. I was shaking so hard the stamps fluttered to the floor. I had done it. The trap was set. But the hardest part was yet to come. I had to get him to take me to the gala. That evening, over a dinner he barely touched, he dropped the bomb I had been expecting. Elena, he said, pushing peas around his plate. I was thinking, about tomorrow night. Yes? Maybe you should sit this one out. I put down my fork. Excuse me? It's going to be boring, he said quickly. Just business talk. Lots of standing around. And you know how your back gets. Plus, I'll be running around managing the board. I won't have time to entertain you. Entertain me? I let a little bit of the ice seep into my voice. I'm your wife, Richard. Not a child. I co-founded this company. I know, he waved a hand dismissively. It's just, honestly, Elle? You don't really fit in with this new crowd. They're young. Aggressive. Tech people. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, I repeated. He meant he didn't want to be uncomfortable. He wanted to parade Tiffany around. He probably told her I was staying home, too sick or too old to come. I see, I said. So, who will be your plus one? No one. Just me. Solo. He lied so easily. It was terrified how natural it was for him. Well, I stood up, walking over to him. I placed a hand on his shoulder. I felt him tense up. That's a shame. Because I already bought a dress. A very expensive dress. And I already RSVP'd to the chairman of the board. He's expecting me. Richard went pale. You talked to Frederick? This morning. He said he couldn't wait to see the heart and soul of Walker Strategies. His words, not mine. I squeezed his shoulder. Hard. I'm coming, Richard. And I promise you, it will be a night no one forgets. He looked at me, trapped. If he told me no now, he would look like a jerk to Frederick. If he let me come, he had to juggle me and Tiffany. Fine, he gritted out. But don't expect me to hold your hand all night. Oh, don't worry, I smiled, thinking of the elevator footage. I know exactly whose hand you like to hold. Wednesday night. The air was thick with humidity and expensive perfume. The gala was held at the Grand Regency Hotel, in a ballroom that dripped with crystal chandeliers and gold leaf. I spent 3 hours getting ready. For the last 10 years, I had dressed to blend in. Beiges, grays, sensible cuts. Not tonight. I wore red. It was a blood-red silk gown, tailored to perfection. It had a sharp, structured neckline that framed my face and a slit that showed off legs I hadn't revealed in a decade. I wore heels, 4 inches of I don't care about my back pain determination. I put on the diamond necklace my mother had left me, the one Richard always said was too flashy. When I walked down the stairs, Richard was waiting in the hallway. He was checking his watch, looking annoyed. He looked up. And he stopped. His jaw actually dropped. For a second, I saw a flash of the man I used to know, the man who used to look at me with desire. But it was quickly replaced by confusion and fear. You. He stammered. You look. Ready, I finished for him. Shall we? The car ride was silent. He texted furiously the entire time. Warning Tiffany, no doubt. Telling her to keep her distance. Telling her the old witch forced her way in. We arrived at the hotel. The valet opened the door. Flashbulbs popped. I stepped out, putting on my best smile. I linked my arm through Richard's. He tried to pull away slightly, but I held on. Smile, darling, I whispered through my teeth. The investors are watching. We entered the ballroom. It was a sea of tuxedos and gowns. A jazz band was playing something upbeat. Waiters circulated with champagne. It was beautiful. And it was all paid for with stolen money. Richard. Elena. Frederick, the chairman of the board, came bounding over. He was a large man with a booming voice and a good heart. He had no idea he was captaining a sinking ship. Elena, you look magnificent. Frederick kissed my hand. We haven't seen you in ages. Richard keeps hiding you away. You know how busy he is, I said, shooting a glance at Richard. Building his legacy. Indeed. Tonight is the night. Frederick clapped Richard on the back. Big announcement, eh? The retirement phase? Richard sweated. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, Frederick. Nonsense. Enjoy the night. Frederick moved on. Richard immediately unhooked his arm from mine. I need a drink, he muttered. Stay here. Don't talk to anyone about business. You don't know the details. I know more than you think, I said to his retreating back. I grabbed a glass of sparkling water and moved to the edge of the room. I scanned the crowd. It didn't take long to find her. Tiffany was near the bar. She was wearing a navy blue dress that was tight. Too tight. It showed off the baby bump aggressively. She was laughing loudly with a group of young associates, holding a glass of what looked like cider. She looked around the room, scanning for Richard. Her eyes landed on him. She beamed. Then, her eyes kept moving, and landed on me. Her smile vanished. She whispered something to the girl next to her. They both looked at me and giggled. Then, Tiffany did something bold. She started walking towards me. She waddled slightly, one hand on her back, playing up the pregnancy. She stopped right in front of me. Mrs. Walker, she said. Her voice was sugary sweet, but her eyes were cold. I didn't think you'd make it. Richard said you weren't feeling well. Age catching up with you? I took a sip of my water. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the insecurity behind the makeup. I saw the fear behind the arrogance. She was just a girl who thought she had won the lottery, not realizing the ticket was counterfeit. I'm feeling wonderful, Tiffany, I said. And that's a lovely dress. It stretches so well. Her face twitched. It's designer. Richard bought it for me. Of course he did, I said. Richard is very generous with other people's money. She frowned. What is that supposed to mean? You'll find out, I said. By the way, you might want to sit down for the presentation. It's going to be educational. I've seen it, she scoffed. I helped him with the slides. It's all about growth and the future. Our future. Is it? I smiled. Well, sometimes files get corrupted. Technology is so tricky. Before she could respond, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice boomed. Please take your seats. The presentation is about to begin. Richard appeared at my elbow, grabbing my arm painfully. What did you say to her? He hissed. Just compliments, I said, pulling my arm away. She seems very proud of your friendship. Sit down, he ordered, pointing to our table at the very front. And keep your mouth shut. We sat. Table 1. Right in the center. Tiffany was at table 5, just off to the side, close enough to make eye contact with Richard, far enough to maintain plausible deniability. Vance and Sarah were at a table in the back, near the exit. I caught Vance's eye. He gave a microscopic nod. He had spoken to the police. They were waiting in the lobby. Richard adjusted his tie. He downed his scotch in one gulp. Showtime, he muttered. Yes, I whispered, clutching my clutch bag where the remote control for the presentation wasn't, because I had already switched the clicker on the podium when I went up to admire the flowers earlier. No, that wouldn't work. Richard would use the clicker. I had to trust the file. Richard walked up the stairs to the stage. The applause was polite. He stood behind the podium, gripping the sides. He looked powerful. He looked successful. Thank you, he said, his voice booming over the speakers. Thank you all for coming. 20 years. It's a long time. I watched him. I felt a strange pang of sadness. I had loved this man. I had built this man. And now, I had to destroy him. Tonight is about transparency, Richard said, flashing his practiced CEO smile. It's about looking at where we've been, and where we are going. It's about integrity. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I have prepared a short retrospective, he continued, to show you the pillars of our success. He pointed the clicker at the giant screen behind him. Click. Slide 1, Walker Strategies, A Legacy of Trust. The crowd clapped. Richard smiled. He relaxed. It was the right file. He thought he was safe. We started in a garage, Richard narrated. Just me and a dream. Lie. It was our apartment, and it was my savings. Click. Slide 2, Annual Growth Chart 2005 to 2015. Steady growth, he said. Conservative management. Click. Slide 3, Our core values, honesty. Family. Commitment. Family, Richard said, looking specifically at table 5 where Tiffany sat. It's what drives us. I took a deep breath. Here it comes. Click. The screen flickered. Instead of slide 4, future projections, a new image appeared. It was a photo. High resolution. It was Richard and Tiffany. In a hot tub. In Cabo. Richard was holding a margarita in one hand and Tiffany's bikini top in the other. They were laughing. The ballroom went silent. Dead silent. Richard, who was looking at the audience, didn't see it at first. He saw the confusion on people's faces. As you can see, he said, reciting his script, we have expanded into new territories. Someone in the back giggled. Then a gasp. Richard turned around. He froze. His body went rigid. The clicker fell from his hand and clattered onto the stage. What the? He whispered into the microphone. He scrambled for the laptop on the podium. He hit the spacebar frantically, trying to skip the slide. But I had set the transitions to automatic 5 seconds. And I had locked the keyboard input. The slide changed. Slide 5, the consulting budget. It was a spreadsheet. But not a boring one. It had big red arrows. Column A, Employee Pension Fund Withdrawal. Column B, Deposit to R&T Consulting LLC. Column C, Purchase of Unit 5B, Riverfront Plaza. And next to it, a photo of the deed with Richard's signature. Oh my God, Frederick whispered from the table next to me. Richard was slamming his hand on the laptop now. Technical difficulties, he shouted, his voice cracking. Cut the feed. Someone cut the power. But the tech guy in the booth, a young kid named Kevin who I had brought coffee to earlier and told to let the show run no matter what, didn't move. The slide changed again. Slide 6, the maid. This was the killer. It was the security footage from the elevator. Sarah's friend Dave had come through with crystal clear HD. On the massive screen, 20 feet tall, everyone saw Richard holding Tiffany's waist. They saw the pregnant belly. They saw the elevator doors open. They saw me. Standing there in my paint-stained clothes. And then, because Dave had synced the audio from the camera, the sound boomed through the ballroom speakers. Tiffany's voice, Richard, honey. Is she the maid? You really need to tell the building manager about the service staff. The gasp from the audience sucked the air out of the room. Every eye turned to me. I sat there, in my red dress, head held high, looking like a queen. Then they turned to Tiffany. She was standing up, knocking her chair over. She looked like a deer in headlights. People were recoiling from her like she was radioactive. Richard was shouting now. This is fake. This is AI. My wife she's having a breakdown. She's jealous. The slide changed one last time. Slide 7, the cost of betrayal. It was a total sum. Stolen from pension fund, $482,000. Forged mortgage loan, $200,000. Credit card debt, jewelry/travel $85,000. Total fraud, $767,000. And below it, in big bold letters, prepared by Elena Walker, CPA. I stood up. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the glasses. I walked to the stairs. I walked up to the stage. Richard looked at me. He was shaking. He looked small. Elena, he pleaded, the microphone picking up his whisper. Stop this. We can talk. Please. I walked past him. I picked up the fallen clicker. I placed it on the podium. I leaned into the microphone. You're right, Richard, I said, my voice calm, ringing through the hall. Transparency is important. I looked out at the audience. At the employees. At the investors. I built this company with him, I said. I managed the books for 20 years. And I know the difference between a business expense and a crime. I pointed at the screen. That is not a legacy. That is a felony. I looked down at Tiffany. She was crying now, mascara running down her face. And Tiffany, I said. To answer your question from last Tuesday. I paused. I'm not the maid. I'm the owner. And you're evicted. You. Richard lunged at me. He actually raised a hand. Police. Vance's voice cut through the tension. 4 uniformed officers marched into the ballroom from the side doors. Richard Walker? The lead officer asked. Richard stumbled back. No, wait. This is a misunderstanding. My wife, she's vindictive. We have a warrant for your arrest, the officer said, pulling out handcuffs. Embezzlement. Securities fraud. Forgery. They grabbed his arms. Richard fought them. He was screaming, crying, begging Frederick to help him. Frederick just turned his back. As they dragged him off the stage, Richard looked back at me. His eyes were full of hate. You ruined everything, he screamed. You're nothing without me. I watched him go. I'm everything without you, I whispered. The ballroom erupted. Not in applause, but in chaos. People were shouting, calling their lawyers, taking photos. I stood center stage. Alone. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt clean. The chaos that followed was a symphony of destruction. Richard was hauled out the main doors, flashing blue lights illuminating his humiliation for the paparazzi who had mysteriously been tipped off. Thank you, Vance. But the real drama was happening inside. Tiffany tried to run. She grabbed her purse and made a beeline for the side exit. But she was blocked by a wall of angry wives. Going somewhere? It was Mrs. Gable, the wife of the VP of sales. The maid service exit is in the back, honey. Tiffany burst into tears. I didn't know. He told me he was divorced. He told me she was crazy. He lied, I said, stepping down from the stage. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. I walked up to Tiffany. She was trembling. He lied to you, I said softly. But you enjoyed the lies, didn't you? You enjoyed the penthouses and the diamonds. You never asked where the money came from. You just didn't care who got hurt, as long as you got yours. I'm pregnant, she wailed, clutching her stomach. You can't do this to me. I didn't do this to you, I said. You did this to yourself when you decided to date a married man and insult his wife. My lawyers will be in touch about the apartment. It was bought with stolen funds. It's evidence now. You have 24 hours to vacate. Where will I go? She sobbed. I don't know, I said. Maybe try the maid's quarters? I hear they're affordable. It was petty. I know. But God, it felt good. Tiffany fled the room, trailing sobs and shame. Frederick approached me. He looked shaken. Elena, he said. I had no idea. The pension fund? It's gone, Frederick, I said. He drained it. But. I pulled a folder from my clutch. I've been working with a forensic accountant. We traced the assets. The apartment, the offshore accounts, the liquid cash he tried to move. If we act fast, tonight, we can freeze it all and recover about 80% of the stolen money. Frederick looked at the folder like it was the Holy Grail. You already did the work? I'm an accountant, Frederick, I smiled. I fix messes. That's what I do. You saved us, he said, tears in his eyes. You saved the company. The employees. Fire him, I said. Tonight. And appoint Brad as interim CEO. He's a good kid, he was just bullied by Richard. Done, Frederick said. And Elena? Yes? We need a CFO. A real one. Someone with integrity. The job is yours. Name your salary. I looked at the ballroom. I looked at the people who had ignored me for years, now looking at me with awe and respect. Double my old salary, I said. And a seat on the board. Done. 3 weeks later. The visiting room at the county detention center was cold and smelled of bleach and despair. I sat behind the thick glass partition. Richard was brought in. He looked diminished. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit that washed out his complexion. His hair, without the expensive dye and styling, was showing its gray roots. He looked old. He looked like the 54-year-old man he was, not the dynamic tycoon he pretended to be. He sat down. He didn't pick up the phone at first. He just stared at me. I picked up the receiver. I waited. He slowly lifted his. You look happy, he croaked. His voice was rough. I am, I said. You took everything, Elena. The house. The cars. The company. I took back what was mine, I corrected. The house was mortgaged with a forged signature. The cars were leased by the company. The company, well, the company needed a leader, not a thief. I was going to put the money back, he insisted, the old arrogance flickering. It was a loan. I just needed liquidity for the new project. You were buying a nursery for your mistress with Janice's retirement money, Richard. Stop lying. The jury won't believe it, and neither do I. He slumped. How is she? Tiffany? She moved back to Idaho, I said. Her parents came to get her. She's suing you for paternity support, by the way. Good luck paying that with zero income. He put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, Elle. I messed up. I felt old. She made me feel young. You were always so serious. So focused on the books. I wanted fun. Fun costs money, Richard, I said. And you spent hours. I slid a document under the slot in the glass. What's this? Divorce papers. And a plea deal. He looked up. Plea deal? Vance worked it out with the DA. If you plead guilty to the fraud and sign over all your remaining assets to the restitution fund, including your 401k, they will recommend 5 years instead of 15. 5 years, he whispered. I'll be 60 when I get out. And you'll be broke, I added. But you'll be free. Eventually. He stared at the papers. His hands shook. Why are you helping me get a lesser sentence? He asked. I'm not doing it for you, I said. I'm doing it to avoid a trial. I don't want my daughter to have to watch her father testify. And I don't want to waste any more time on you. He looked at me. I still love you, you know. I looked at him. And I realized something amazing. I felt nothing. No hate. No love. Just indifference. He was a bad investment I had finally written off. Goodbye, Richard, I said. I stood up. Elena, he called out, panic in his voice. Wait. Who will put money on my commissary? Who will visit me? I don't know, I said, turning away. Maybe you can find a maid. I walked out of the jail and into the sunshine. The air tasted sweet. 1 year later. I stepped into the elevator of the Walker Strategies building. But this wasn't the service elevator. This was the executive lift. I pressed the button for the penthouse floor, not an apartment, but my corner office. I caught my reflection in the polished brass doors. The woman staring back at me wasn't the tired, gray-clad ghost from a year ago. I was wearing a cream-colored suit that cost more than Richard's old Mercedes. My hair was cut in a sharp, chic bob. I looked my age, 53, but I looked powerful. I looked like a woman who owned her scars. The doors opened. Good morning, Ms. Walker. My assistant, a bright young man named Leo, handed me my latte. Good morning, Leo. Are the quarterly reports ready? On your desk. And Sarah is waiting for you in the conference room. She brought donuts. I smiled. Sarah, my forensic accountant turned actual best friend, was now our chief audit officer. We ran a tight ship. No shell companies. No secrets. I walked into my office. The view of the city was breathtaking. I sat at my desk, a sleek glass one, not the old oak one I used to hide behind. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily, my daughter. Emily, Mom. Just saw the Forbes article. The Iron Lady of Accounting. You look like a badass. So proud of you. I chuckled. Badass. I liked that. I thought about where I was a year ago. Standing in that elevator, holding a paint scraper, being called the maid. It would have been so easy to crumble. It would have been so easy to go home, cry, accept the betrayal, maybe fight for a scrap of dignity in a messy divorce. But I chose a different path. I opened my laptop. The background was a photo of me in Italy. I had taken that trip alone last month. I ate pasta, I drank wine, I flirted with a handsome tour guide named Marco who knew exactly who I was and didn't care. I didn't need a man to complete me. I had rebuilt myself, brick by brick. I picked up the phone to call Vance. We had a lunch date. Not for business. Just for fun. He had become a good friend, a grumpy mentor who reminded me to keep my shark teeth sharp. Elena, Vance answered on the first ring. Ready to celebrate? Celebrate what? Your 1-year anniversary of freedom. I'm always ready, I said. I hung up and spun my chair around to look at the city. Somewhere out there, in a minimum security facility, Richard was probably mopping a floor or serving food in a cafeteria. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was finally doing the service work he had so despised. And Tiffany? I heard she was working at a diner in Idaho. I hoped she was treating the customers with respect. You never know who you're talking to. I took a sip of my coffee. Life is funny. It breaks you down just to see if you can put yourself back together differently. Better. They tried to erase me. They tried to make me invisible. But they forgot the most important rule of accounting: everything must balance. And I had balanced the books. With interest.